The Denver Broncos offense on Sunday may be undermanned on the offensive line and at one starter at the wide receiver position. We'll talk about the impact this could have on Denver's game plan against Khalil Mack and that tough Chargers defense. We'll break that down and much more here on today's episode, Locked On Broncos.
You are Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, Broncos Country? Welcome into another episode, Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of the show is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets. So check it out today, FanDuel.com to get started. I'm Cody Roark, Broncos reporter for Mile High Sports, joined as always by Sayre Bedinger, site expert over there, predominantlyorange.com. We're appreciative of you, Broncos Country, for taking time out of your day to make us your first listen and also becoming an everyday listener of the show. If you haven't done so already, do us a favor. Hit that subscribe to that follow button. Become an everyday listener. Become a first listener so you never miss out on what's going on with the Denver Broncos from an objective point of view. I cover practice daily in Dove Valley. Sarah's been covering the Broncos for a long, long time. That just goes to show our age a little bit here. We appreciate you for rocking with us here, Broncos Country. And here's what you can expect on today's episode of the show. It's our final game preview for Sunday's game against the Los Angeles Chargers, 2:05 p.m. Mountain Time kickoff on CBS. There's some questions going around with Denver. What can they do in order to come out on top on Sunday against the Chargers here? Their first look against Jim Harbaugh and a new-look Chargers team coming off of a bye week. What are some of the key matchups that will define the game? Who will Patrick Surtain II be following? That'll be a key one there. But more importantly, we're going to kick things off. The Broncos offense could be undermanned here in Sunday's game against the Chargers, not just on the offensive line, but also at receiver.
Right, because Josh Reynolds hasn't been practicing, Cody. When I saw him pop up on the Wednesday injury report, you kind of figured, well, this is just par for the course because Josh has popped up on the injury report since basically the start of the season with a sore Achilles and things that we had heard about previously. But now it seems like after not practicing the first couple of days, he's going to need a significant ramp-up period into the weekend in order to be able to play against the Chargers. Now, Josh Reynolds obviously had his first touchdown in week 5 for the Denver Broncos against the Las Vegas Raiders, and it was a nice play as well. So the Broncos, they have options at the wide receiver position. Of course, a lot of young guys and the new guy, A.T. Perry, that we talked about earlier this week. But I mean, obviously you want to see Josh Reynolds available and out there and continuing to build that chemistry with quarterback Bo Nix, because at this point, we haven't quite seen that chemistry developed between Bo and all the receivers. These guys need all the reps they can get together.
Yeah, and the hard part about that too, Sarah, is when you have different changes to the lineup, different guys that you're going to be thrown to on a week-to-week basis, like that can impact your chemistry with certain guys, or it could just impact everybody maybe being on the same page, right? Maybe the quarterback, everyone else is on the same page, but that new receiver that's getting into the mix here might not understand a certain thing, or may, like, during a game, sometimes things change. Like, you can do it at practice all week long against scout team, but then it's the actual game situation. Sometimes you forget what you were doing in practice. But, obviously this now means, like, hey, if Josh Reynolds misses this game, which, look, I think when you look at the injury report, anytime you have 2 DNPs in a row, probably a good indicator that they're going to miss, obviously, Sunday's game. Now, there's a chance, obviously, as the time we're sitting down recording this, it's Friday morning. The Broncos will practice here in a few hours. We'll get an official update. We'll do a little bit of a bonus episode later for you to give you the official injury report, who's in, who's out versus the Chargers. But if Josh Reynolds comes into Friday's practice and is limited, okay, now he's truly questionable for Sunday's game, and then maybe it'll be a game-time decision. Right now, I think we got to shift our eyes back to Devon Vele, who's obviously been a little bit of a healthy scratch the last couple of weeks here inside of Peyton's offense, and a big reason for that really has been Troy Franklin getting a little bit more of an invested role here offensively. Look, and I think despite the drop that Troy Franklin had this past week, Troy is a good piece inside this offense. You have to keep him in. You can't just yank him out now. Yeah, he had that drop. You know what you do, though? You go right back to the rookie. Keep feeding him, and obviously Bo's going to do that. Bo's got Troy Franklin's back in that situation. But now you get another young guy, Devon Vele. Like, Sarah, when you think about it, you get Troy Franklin playing. You get, obviously, Cortland Sutton playing a big role. But now it's like you have 2 of your rookie wide receivers that you drafted on the field getting playing time. It's a great sign for how the player development process has played out here for Denver. But more importantly, like, this draft class has been very fun to watch early on here. So we'll see Vele maybe back in the mix. That'll be a fun thing to see. You mentioned A.T. Perry. Will he play? I don't know. Like, he just got here a couple of days ago, so may not play this week. But the bigger concern here, Sayre, is on the offensive line. Luke Wattenberg and obviously Alex Palczewski, the starting center, starting right tackle. DNP Wednesday, Thursday, more than likely, both guys are not expected to play in Sunday's game, which means that Alex Forsyth will step in at center, Matt Peart at right tackle. Certainly against the Chargers defense right now, that's one of the top ranked units when you look at it statistically. A little bit of a concern here.
A little bit of a concern, obviously, when those guys are coming off the edge and playing well. And the number one ranked scoring defense. I know it's only been 4 games for the Chargers, and they have a little bit of an unfair advantage in that way. But still, I mean, you hold the Kansas City Chiefs to just 17 points, and you limit what Sean Payton said early in the week, Cody, in terms of limiting explosive plays. He said that they had to go back to watching, the preseason to kind of get film on explosive plays against the Chargers, and that they do such a great job of limiting those. What do you need in order to have explosive plays in the NFL? Well, you got to give your quarterback some time back there and give the receivers time to get open as well. So I think the pressure is definitely on Bo Nix to make sure that, we've seen him take a couple of sacks this year that, should he have gotten sacked at certain times? You remember against TJ Watt, it was kind of almost like the ghost of TJ got him there. I know he did trip him up a little bit, but it kind of felt like, man, you could probably escape from that as an NFL quarterback. And then against Max Crosby as well, not necessarily getting hit hard when he's going down there. So for Bo Nix, the pressure is going to be on to make sure you stand tall and stand tough in the pocket, use that escapability, use that mobility. Not that you're going to be running around all day, because, hey, we could have said the same thing when Alex Palczewski took over Mike McGlinchey's spot, that, well, Bo's just going to be out there getting pressured on every snap. And then, of course, 2 straight games without a sack for him. So it's not a guarantee that he's going to be running for his life against the Chargers, but at the same time, you want to be prepared and you want to be ready to use those legs as efficiently and effectively as you can.
Yeah, and we'll dive a little bit deeper into that. And obviously, once we get to our keys to victory, anytime you have change-ups on the offensive line, okay, hey, is everyone on the same page with the snap count, everything like that? With Matt Peart, good thing he's already been kind of part of the offense as the jumbo package offensive tackle. So really for him, he should already know all this stuff. So he's going to play that right tackle spot there. I think one thing we got to keep an eye on here, Sayre, I think that there is a possibility, right? And obviously here Friday morning, Denver is expected, from what I know, from what I've been told, Denver could bring Audric Estime back and activate him officially. Like, they opened his 21-day window, but I think the plan is to activate him officially for Sunday's game against the Chargers, which means that Denver's going to have to make a roster spot. I think right now Luke Wattenberg might go on short-term IR at this point. Alex Palczewski, we at least saw him on the side field, had not seen Luke Wattenberg. So something to keep an eye on here is the tide suddenly changes, and now all of a sudden you're going to have this physical game. You got to do a Thursday night game. Denver's going to have as many healthy bodies as possible here, because the stretch coming up is going to be a little bit challenging, but we'll see if Denver is up for the test here. Broncos country, how concerned are you about some of the injuries on the offensive line, and who do you expect to step up at wide receiver if, in fact, Josh Reynolds can't go? Make sure you let us know if you're watching, listening, Locked On Broncos, wherever you get your podcasts, or on YouTube. One thing we always like to do here on our Friday game previews, we like to look at key matchups we think will define the outcome of Sunday's game. Of course, we're always going to start off with who is Patrick Surtain II going to be following this weekend. We'll break that down and much more on today's episode, Locked On Broncos. Today's show is brought to you by Robinhood. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5% APY on uninvested cash, receive unlimited 1% deposit bonuses, and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rates may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC.
How will the Denver Broncos cornerbacks match up against the Chargers wide receivers? What does that edge rusher for Los Angeles matchup against the Denver offensive tackles look like. We've got that and more in terms of the key matchups in week 6 for the Denver Broncos against the Los Angeles Chargers on today's episode, Locked On Broncos. But before we go any further, we have to say thank you, as always, to every single one of you that makes Locked On Broncos your first listen of the day every single day. If you haven't already done so, we appreciate if you hit subscribe wherever you're listening, as well as over there on YouTube. Cody, there's a lot of YouTube channels and shows that I watch a lot of the times that I don't even realize, like, I'm not even subscribed to this show because they show up in my algorithm all the time. So maybe that's you with Locked On Broncos. If you haven't already done so, hit subscribe and join that army over there on YouTube. But let's talk about some key matchups of this show. And obviously, if you are watching on YouTube, sound off in the comments. Let us know your thoughts on that, or you can always reach out to us on social. But I think we always have to start, like you said, Cody, with who is Pat Surtain going to be following around in this game, because the Los Angeles Chargers, it's a very different looking wide receiver group than we've grown accustomed to in recent years. We already saw Mike Williams this year. He's playing for the New York Jets. He had a couple big plays against the Broncos, of course. And then Keenan Allen, the long mainstay of the Los Angeles Chargers. He is also gone. He is a member of the Chicago Bears. So it's a new look group for Jim Harbaugh and Justin Herbert out there at wide receiver. Who do you see Pat Surtain in this cornerback group matching up with when you look at the Chargers wide receiver room?
Yeah, I think their number one option right now is obviously Quentin Johnston. I think that's going to be who we see Pat cover in Sunday's game. And look, so much of the conversation, like, Pat's had a great week, right? The 2 interception performance, the pick 6, AFC Defensive Player of the Week, well deserved there. And the one thing I keep going to is, like, yes, there's been a lot of conversation about Pat and Riley Moss is emerging as maybe one of the best young cornerback duos right now in the NFL. Certainly their numbers and their EPA allowed is certainly suggest just that. But the question here is everyone forgetting about Jaquan McMillan? I'm also guilty of that, right? Denver, I look at their cornerback trio between Pat, between Riley, and obviously Jaquan McMillan. I think you have a really strong case that this could be the best corner trio right now in the NFL. So now, what does the trio look like for the Los Angeles Chargers, specifically at wide receiver? Well, I think Pat Surtain on the outside against Quentin Johnston is going to be the number one thing there, right? But then Riley Moss, who's he going to follow? More than likely, I'd guess Josh Palmer, or you could see him against Ladd McConkey, depending on where Ladd lines up. I'm very curious to see what they decide to do there. Or is that going to be where Jaquan McMillan versus Ladd McConkey, who's emerged as a little bit of a fun target for Justin Herbert? These matchups right here, I think, are going to be fun, right? And so much of it is placated on, okay, what can the Broncos defensive line do to generate pressure on Herbert? Things like that. We'll dive deeper in that later on, the keys to victory. But I like Denver's 3 against their 3. And obviously you have to factor in, yes, we're not ignoring the tight end position. Will Disley, Hayden Hurst, they have guys that they can connect to out of the, obviously at the tight end position. Brock Bowers coming off of a pretty big game against Denver. So Denver's secondary between Brandon Jones, PJ Locke, those guys are going to have to account for the tight end this week specifically. But I think it's going to boil down to Denver's 3 corners versus LA's 3 top receivers. I think that's how this thing's going to go. That's a key matchup that I have my eye on. What's one that you have your eye on as well?
Well, I think that's a great one. I think when you look at the other side of the ball, when the Broncos are trying to move the ball offensively, it's all right, where are the Chargers lining up Khalil Mack, and how is he going to affect this game? Because obviously, even as he's gotten into his later years in the NFL, he's still very, very effective when it comes to rushing the passer. I think there's no surprise there whatsoever. He leads this Chargers team with 4 quarterback hits in the first 4 games. He leads the team with 2.5 sacks as well. So the bigger question might be, who the heck else is going to be out there off the edge terrorizing the other side of the field? Because we know Garrett Bowles has been called for a couple of holding penalties in this season so far. Joey Bosa was on the injury report early in the week. And the Chargers have other guys, though. I mean, they've got Bud Dupree, the veteran, out there as well, who's able to, make some contributions. He's got 2 sacks so far this season. Tuli Tuipulotu, he's got a couple of tackles for loss and a quarterback hit this season. They've got Denzel Perryman blitzes quite a bit. Derwin James blitzes quite a bit. So everybody's going to have their hands full. But really, it comes down to, can you contain Khalil Mack off the edge, especially if Joey Bosa is not playing, because that takes out one of the main guys of the equation, as we saw the Broncos with Max Crosby and then TJ Watt a few weeks before that. How do you handle a premier edge rusher if you're the Broncos offensive tackles?
Yeah, and look now, especially with new offensive tackle, and obviously, like now you're gonna have a new center in the mix more than likely for this week. Like all of that's gonna definitely, I'd say you might see more pressure sent at the center position this week. You also might see maybe a couple of blitzes off the right side there, which might free up Khalil Mack opposite, maybe in a one-on-one against Garrett Bowles. And look, Garrett's been solid this season, but I feel like Garrett has some up and down moments, especially against, when he goes against a speed rusher. There's a few times he gets beat. Power rusher, there's some times where a power rusher baits him, clubs down, and then he kind of moves him out of the way there. Like that's where I think the pocket presence of Bo Nix, being able to sense where pressure is coming from, which he's done a really good job of this year, I think is going to be key here. Sayre, that might be the key that you mentioned here. This might be what really defines the outcome of Sunday's game here. We could talk about PS2 putting the clamps on people, but it's, can your offense do something, right? Because the offense has been very inconsistent for Denver this year. And so when you're finding yourselves particularly not effective, not efficient on first down or second down, it makes it harder when you're on third down, and it makes it easier for the defense to go back there and play back on third down to try to do different things to force you to throw a ball into a tight coverage, or maybe you try to pressure you to force an interception, like something along those lines. And now with some of the injuries, it's certainly a question. I think that's going to be a huge key here, Sayre. I think another one too, obviously coming into it, Denver stopping the run. They've been very good against the run this year. They gave up a little bit of a chunk play to Amir Abdullah last week, but then they really buckled down. We mentioned it in the first half against the Raiders. They allowed 110 yards rushing, but in the second half, the Raiders finished with the 115 rushing yards total, so only 5 rushing yards in the second half for the Raiders in Denver's win on Sunday. So J.K. Dobbins looks good. I mean, obviously, this is a guy who's been battling some major injuries throughout his career, former Baltimore Raven. Obviously, Gus Edwards, another former Baltimore Raven now with the Los Angeles Chargers, been on the injury report as a DNP all week. I don't think he's going to play, but J.K. Dobbins, he's a guy who can handle the workload. He broke off a 61-yard run against the Raiders when they first played. He's a big physical guy, and I think Denver's going to have to just bring everything, right? But then again, I look at what Denver was able to do with Breece Hall against Braylon Allen. I like Denver's front seven here against J.K. Dobbins. I think it'll be the toughest test really outside of the Steelers that Dobbins has faced this year. Will be going up against Denver's run D, but you can't allow anyone to slip through the cracks. I think that's going to be crucial for Denver this week defensively, plug in the run once again.
Yeah, we saw too many big plays on the ground in the first half against the Raiders there, especially without even Zamir White on the field. Cody, like you mentioned, the Broncos buckled down in the second half, but obviously the Raiders were executing their blocking schemes and they were having their way in the first half in terms of the running game, and it was working very well for them. So the Chargers, they're obviously going to be watching that tape and seeing, okay, what can we do similarly to kind of exploit that? And the Chargers are getting healthy on the offensive line, right? I mean, Joe Alt has been practicing and Rashawn Slater back for them. So they're getting healthy on the offensive line, and just the freshness of coming off the bye week. Like the Broncos, as we talked about early in the week, they are not going to be able to rest on their laurels. Like you are not Super Bowl champs after getting to 3-2, after winning 3 straight games, right? You've proven absolutely nothing. Like you could still end up 3-14 if you don't play hard and play well the rest of the season. So the Broncos have to come out still with that chip on their shoulder. Like they should be offended that they're home underdogs against the Chargers, right? And so there's a lot of different aspects of this game that are kind of, the pendulum seems to be swinging a little bit towards the Chargers in terms of, oh man, they're fresh, they're getting healthy on the offensive line, they lost 2 straight, so they're kind of due a little bit. The Broncos have to make sure that when you come out, once again, you're the aggressor in this game. And that's one of the key things in this whole deal is, man, going up against J.K. Dobbins, like he's not the most dynamic back they're going to face all season. You have to shut that stuff down early on in this game and make sure that you are winning at the line of scrimmage. So that's another matchup, I think, for the Broncos to watch here. Like you said, J.K. Dobbins against that run defense.
There's always this saying, you're either the hammer or the nail. Are the Broncos going to be the hammer once again this week? That's the hope. And I know Broncos country is absolutely hoping for that. Agreed with you. I think the mentality in the locker room, though, the players, they've even acknowledged that, hey, it's great that we've won 3 straight, but we haven't done anything yet. We have not reached our goals. We have to continue to put our head down and work. I like the mentality inside the locker room. I think that's a big testament to the culture that is going on in there, which is great. So that's a great sign to see. We'll see if Denver can obviously come out 2:05 p.m. Mountain Time on CBS on Sunday. Broncos Country, if you're going to be at the stadium, I'm giving away a Patrick Surtain II jersey, one of the Nike Elite Vapors. So make sure if you're at the stadium, first person to come up and claim it, they get it. That's all yours there. But with that said, Broncos Country, in terms of Denver walking away on Sunday with a victory to win 4 straight, what is it that they have to do? A lot of this week's keys to victory have to do with offensive efficiency. We'll break that down and much more on today's episode of the show. Broncos Country, today's show is brought to you by our friends over there at FanDuel. And as you all know, at FanDuel, they are America's #1 sportsbook. And with the NFL season being in the full swing of things, there's so much going on. You got Thursday night football, you got Sunday night football, Monday night football. And if you like college football, guess what? There's Saturdays. But there's football legitimately almost every single day of the week leading up through December. And FanDuel Sportsbook is the place to be. For the Broncos game this Sunday, Denver is 3-point home underdogs to the Los Angeles Chargers as Jim Harbaugh, Justin Herbert come to town. FanDuel lets you get on the action, whether you want to choose the Broncos cover the spread, whether they win outright on the money line, or you can do player props where you can look at Bo Nix in terms of passing yards. You can look at anytime touchdowns for Denver, whether that's Javonte Williams, Cortland Sutton. You can get all that inside of the FanDuel Sportsbook app. And today, you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Once again, when you place your first $5 bet, you're going to get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. So check it out today. All the action at FanDuel.com. Once again, that's FanDuel.com. If the Denver Broncos are going to come out in Sunday's game against the Chargers in their second AFC West showdown in an important conference game, divisional game, tiebreakers are essential. They're going to have to come out and establish some efficiency on the offensive side of the ball, particularly on the early downs. We'll break that down here on today's show. Thanks once again, Broncos Country, for taking time out of your day to make us your first listen, to make us a part of your day. It means the world to us. You take time to hear, to watch anything that we have to say. We appreciate you so much. Engage with other members in Broncos Country on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Sayre, with that said, I think the key here, starting things off here in our Keys to Victory portion of today's game preview show, I think so much of it goes to what has been an issue for them consistently all season long, maybe outside of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers game. And I would say maybe outside of the second half of the Raiders game, early down efficiency. If Denver is going to find themselves in a position to win this game, the offense can't continue to get off to the same slow start on a weekly basis. Earlier this week, I asked Sean Payton what's been the trend about some of their struggles in the first half versus where they get going in the second half. And he said a lot of it has to do with how we're playing on first and second down. And then obviously that impacts maybe our third down distance and our third down play calling operation. Denver, I would love to see them come out against this Chargers defense, try to run the ball early on, right? Like, let's say, hey, 1st and 10, you get a 4-yard carry. Okay, hey, I'll take a 2nd and 6. Okay, what are you going to do on 2nd and 6? You got to throw it for a first down, or are you going to run it? Okay, now you might have a 3rd and 3, a 3rd and 2. It just depends. But Denver's got to stop going backwards on first down. They got to stop going backwards on second down, because that has really been the biggest issue that's plagued them from having more possessions overall in the game.
Yeah, and it's led to 24.6% conversion rate third downs, which is 31st in the NFL. So you can't have a lack of success on first and second downs. You have to get into those more manageable third down situations. And frankly, I mean, fewer third down situations, right? We talked about 12 third down situations against the Raiders. And when you're getting into that many third down situations, I know that's not overly uncommon, right? But when you get into so many, like if you have 12 or more throughout the course of a game and you're converting at 25% rate or less, I mean, like you said, that limits your total plays. It's not good. It gives you fewer opportunities to sustain drives, to get other playmakers involved, to wear down the opposing defense. And so obviously, you know, we talk about these things each week, and I think people understand some of these things are rudimentary, like be better on first and second down, obviously, but like what do the Broncos have to do in order to do that? Because as of right now, there hasn't been anything that's working early on in the game. So I think what we've seen, the running game really start to improve. You and I have talked about this, Cody. As the running game gets better and better, I think that has to become the bread and butter for this team on the early downs to really get into those favorable situations. So run ball dominance, that's huge. And I think also when you talk about on the other side of the line of scrimmage, it's, you know, winning in the trenches. That's an age-old key to victory in the NFL. And we're going to talk about it pretty much every week on this show, but we want to see this game. What do you think? I mean, getting the ball into Justin Herbert's hands and forcing him to throw a lot, I kind of feel like that is the ticket for the Broncos, because when the Chargers have been successful this season, it's been when Justin's not throwing the ball a ton. They're running the ball really well in those first 2 games. So I think if you're the Broncos, you want to make Justin Herbert's life miserable out there.
Well, and you look at, obviously, with Jim Harbaugh coming over, his philosophy from what we've seen from the time he was at Michigan and things like, even back at San Francisco, it's, hey, we're going to run the heck out of the football, but it's going to open up the passing game for you. I think that's the goal in mind here with Justin Herbert. And I understand, kind of could handcuff him a little bit. It's like, hey, like, what if the run game isn't going? Well, now you're going to put all this pressure on Herbert to just try to operate at the quarterback position. We talk about balance in the NFL offensively. We've talked so much about it with Bo Nix. Well, same thing applies for Justin Herbert. And I think that's where Denver's advantage defensively can come into play here. Stop the run, because what have we seen the Broncos defense do well against Herbert? They've been able to get after him. They've been able to generate sacks. They've been able to generate interceptions off of him. Justin Herbert has never won a game yet in his career in Denver. So I think that's just something you continue to build off of. We know the crowd is going to be raucous and things like that, but come out, plug the run. You got the cover guys to match up against their receiving options, and then get after Justin Herbert. Denver's been able to generate pressure at a high rate with the multitude of players this year. Keep that level going. I think that's going to play a big factor into Sunday's game here if Denver is going to try to find a way to come out with a victory to win 4 straight games. I think that's going to be very, very crucial here, Sayre.
It is, Cody, and obviously you want to see this team go and protect the ball as well. When you talk about keys to victory, you can't turn the ball over. That's something that Bo Nix has done extremely well in these last 3 games. Is not only did he go 2 games without a sack, he's now gone 3 straight games without a turnover. So we don't want to, count your eggs before they hatch. I think a lot of times people are like, oh, you just jinxed it and things like that. No, that stuff's not real, people.
Jinxes don't exist.
Jinxes don't exist. Okay. I mean, yeah, things happen in the NFL. So could Bo turn the ball over after we say that? Absolutely. But it means nothing to the fact that we said it, because we've been saying it, since he started this streak here. So, I think when you look at this Chargers team, that is going to be key in them potentially coming into Denver and getting a win. Is, can you force a turnover and get an extra possession there and take a little bit of a 2-possession lead against the Broncos here? Because even when we saw that with the Raiders, the Broncos were able to climb back in and kind of dominate the game. So for the Chargers, I think they might be a little bit better defensively than the Raiders are. So if they can get themselves a couple of possession lead, 10-point lead, a 14-point lead at some point in this game, it would be very difficult for the Broncos to kind of come back against them, given some of the guys they have on that defensive side. So Bo Nix, especially early on in this game, you have got to take care of the football and make sure that you're protecting it, not being overly conservative, but not being reckless with it, right? And making sure that, I didn't see that defender come in there, or I thought I could fit it into this spot, or, things like that. Take what the defense gives you, but take care of the football when you're pushing it downfield.
And I feel like in the last handful of weeks, Bo has done a really good job of gauging. And I think you see him testing it a little bit, trying to figure out, okay, what can I do at the NFL level? What can I get away with? What can't I get away with, right? Early on, we saw him try to get away with some things that maybe he can't necessarily get away with on a consistent basis. Against Seattle, some of the throws that he had there. We've seen him play much smarter in terms of decision making. Like there was that one play to load Jordan Humphrey that you got the QB nerd analytic guys on Twitter saying, well, he should have thrown it here. I trust guys like Chase Daniel, guys who actually played quarterback, guys who played in Sean Payton's system to evaluate QBs over a guy who's probably never even thrown a football, probably can't even throw a tight spiral. So I'm tired of those conversations. Let Bo continue to grow. And look, I think the number one thing he has done is demonstrated on a consistent basis in the last handful of weeks, not putting the ball in harm's way. That is huge. Sean Payton likes that, and they're finding ways to win games. Even if he's not throwing for 389 yards, at this point, it's about efficiency. He's been efficient. It's been fun to see. So we'll see. Broncos Country. Denver's going to host the Chargers this weekend at Empower Field at Mile High, 2:05 p.m. Mountain Time kickoff on CBS. You get the Locked On Broncos post-game report. Once I get back from the stadium, Sayre and I are going to break down the game, and hopefully we are talking about A fourth straight victory for Denver. Makes it fun here on the show to cover this team. Broncos Country, we appreciate you so much. Thanks for rocking with us. Enjoy the rest of your week. After today's show, make sure you go check out the episode we did in the Locked On AFC podcast. It's here in the Locked On Broncos feed where we talk about Sean Payton being right about Nathaniel Hackett. We sit down every Thursday. It's everyone in the AFC that can make it. We sit down and talk about the biggest topics in the NFL. Go check that out if you haven't done so already. We'll see you for the post-game report on Sunday.